Are you wondering what the ideal career is for you? Well, stick around because in this video, I'm actually going to share with you 6 questions to ask to figure out the perfect career path. Hey everybody, it's Brian from A Life After Layoff, and today I want to share with you how to choose the best career path for yourself. Now, this is one of those age-old questions that most of us have asked ourselves at some point in our lives. What's the ideal career path for you? And I'm sure at one point you wanted to be a firefighter or an astronaut, but we know for most of us those aren't realistic career choices. But the real question becomes is, what do you want to do when you grow up? And for some of us, we actually haven't even figured that out yet. So in this video, I'm actually going to dive into how to figure out the perfect career path for you. Now, as a corporate recruiter and an HR professional with over 20 years of experience interviewing and hiring thousands of people into some of the world's largest and most well-known companies, I know a thing or two about ideal career paths and how to find the right fit. So I want to shed a little bit of light on a formula that I came up with. But before we get too far into it, if you're interested in more career-minded videos just like this one, make sure you hit the subscribe and the notify button. All right, picking the right career path can seem daunting. Most of us go into the workforce without any real plan or any real direction about what we truly want to do. Yeah, we might have some aspirational idea of what we think we want to do, but for the most part, you're basically throwing a dart at a board and hoping that it's the right fit. Here's a crazy thing if you actually sit back and think about it for a second. Most of us enter into the workforce at age 18. And I'll argue that somebody in college is also entering into the workforce at age 18 because you're essentially selecting your career program at that point in time. And for a vast majority of us, we don't really truly know what we want to do at that young of an age. So we basically make a decision on our career that we think seems good enough. And then we start down a 40-year path hoping to find some level of satisfaction. And I'm here to tell you that is not a winning strategy. But unfortunately, a vast majority of people choose their careers in that exact manner. Because there's a lot of people that end up choosing incorrectly and they get about 20 years into their career and realize that they made a horrible mistake. They're just not passionate about what they do, and now they have to spend a lot more time and energy backing it up and moving on to a different path. And in fact, that's the number one reason why people reach out to me for private one-on-one consultations is this concept of, I'm unhappy with my job, I'm unhappy with my career path, and I need to figure out something better. So then we work to unpack it and we try to figure out the best route for them. But that can be avoided if you put a little bit of thought and planning into your career at the beginning. And if you're somebody that's further along in your career, these tips still apply to you too. It's just going to take a little bit more effort. So I've developed a little litmus test, and it's 6 questions that I like to ask in order to help determine the best career for you. So let's jump into them. Now, the first question that we need to ask is, what are you truly passionate about? Because if you're passionate about what you're doing, your career is no longer going to be considered work. It's going to be a labor of love. But if you end up in a job that you're not passionate about, it is truly going to seem like work each and every day. Now, it's not to say that there's not going to be days where you're going to feel the grind even doing something that you're passionate about, because you probably will. But when you're doing something that you're truly passionate about, that work becomes a lot more bearable. So ask yourself, what is it that you do in your life that when you're actually doing it, time seems to slip away? That's a really good indicator of what you should be focusing on in your career. If you're somebody that likes to tinker with a car, maybe that's an engineering career path for you. Or potentially, maybe you want your own business where you hot rod vehicles for a living. And if you're somebody that absolutely loves to bake, I think you know what career path that could lead to. But again, it's finding that burning passion for what you truly love to do and figuring out a way to make that your career. Yeah, and I know that some of you are saying, yeah, that's fine and dandy, but my true dream is to go backpacking across Europe. Rick Steves had the same dream, and you know what? He's made a multi-million-dollar business doing it. So if you think outside of the box and you follow your true passion, the work that you're doing is not going to seem like work, and you're going to be more successful because of it. But on the flip side, if you're doing something that you're just not passionate about, it is going to seem like work. And if you're willing to spend the next 40 years of your life doing something that seems like work every day, then by all means, continue to do what you're doing. Okay, now we've figured out what our passion is. The next question to ask is, what career options are available in that space? Is it a job or a traditional career, something that you can go to school for and get trained on? Maybe it's a vocation that you prefer. Maybe you really love woodworking and that's something that you could see yourself doing. Maybe you want to become a carpenter. And maybe it's a business idea and your passion lends itself to being an entrepreneur. But the point is, figure out what all the career options are in that space, and that will lead you to the next question. Is there money to be made in that space? In other words, is there demand? So if you're trying to get into something that's very niche or unique and there's just not a lot of demand for it, you need to get creative. And in that case, you really need to think outside of the box. But don't fret, because I'm a believer that there's $1 million business idea for almost every single passion out there. You just have to be creative and really think outside of the box. If you're somebody that is struggling with coming up with those ideas on your own, you can actually head over to my website, and I've got a service for that. So make sure you check out my business idea generation consulting. So now we have our passion. Now we know that there's career options there and there's a demand. What's the next question to ask? So the fourth question that we need to ask is, what's the barrier to entry? Now, a barrier to entry could come in a lot of different forms, whether it's additional schooling that you might need, whether it's specialized training, whether it's getting a foot in the door somewhere. It might even be experience or startup costs. But what you should do is do your research and figure out exactly what it is going to take for you to get there. And if it's a traditional career, I suggest that you do a little reconnaissance. Go and find some job descriptions of those types of positions that are already being posted and figure out what they're looking for. And that'll help you gauge what kind of entrance requirements that you need to have, whether it's the schooling or something else. And if it's a business idea, then you really need to think about, what are all the startup costs going to be? Or what kind of experience do you need? You might have to get a real job first in order to get that experience, in order to truly be effective in your passion. Okay, so now we know what the barriers are. The next question we need to ask is, how do we overcome those barriers? So if it's schooling, do you have the bandwidth and the financial resources to go back to school and get that done? Because let's face it, going back to school and getting the right education can be a huge barrier for some people. If it's experience that you need, how do you get that experience? Make sure you check out my video on how to get a job with little to no experience if you're interested in more ideas on that subject. And if it's a business that you're interested in and there's startup costs, then you have to get a little creative. You might have to look into loans, working for a little bit to save up some money, or figuring out a way to do it at little to no cost. And I think all of those are viable options if you're smart and resourceful. Okay, so now we've got all these things formulating, and the secret to all of this is the final question. Do you have the motivation to do it? Because for many of us, the path of least resistance is the one that we fall into. And the path of least resistance is usually the one that's the least satisfying. So you have to reach down deep and decide yourself whether or not you have the motivation to actually go out and grab your dream. Because let's face it, anything worth working for is going to take a huge sacrifice. Whether it's shifting into a new career or starting your own business, every one of them is going to require you to make sacrifice. So if you don't have the inner burning motivation, you need to figure out a way to get that. And unfortunately, I don't have any secrets for that one. You just have to have it or you don't. So as you go through and you ask yourself all of these 6 questions, hopefully you're going to land on a few ideas that will be truly passionate for you. And then we look at the action plan, but that's a whole other conversation for a different video. Now, I hope you take some value out of this, because this is truly the key to job satisfaction in your career. So you have 2 choices that you can make. You can either start a career that you think is good enough, or continue down a career that has just been good enough for you, or you can find what your true passion is and pursue it. And one's the path of least resistance, and one does require you to stretch a little bit. Which one are you going to choose? So leave a comment below. I'd be curious to hear what your thoughts are on your ideal career. If you need more help in your career search, that's actually what I specialize in. I've got a website called alifeafterlayoff.com. It's loaded with tips and tricks, all from a recruiter's perspective. And it's actually my passion, so I practice what I preach. And I have some training resources in there, including how to write the perfect resume. It's called Resume Rocketfuel. It teaches you exactly how to write a resume that's going to get you the best chance of getting noticed for the recruiter, so that you can get your first interview for your dream job. Then once you've gotten your foot in the door, the Ultimate Job Seeker Bootcamp is designed to get you all the way to the offer and hopefully seal the deal. Definitely don't want to miss those, so make sure you check them out. Hey, I know it's not easy to figure out what you were truly meant to do, but that's what I'm here for. And I really want to help you try to find that passion, because that's ultimately what's going to drive your career success in the long run. And don't forget to hit that like button, because it really helps other people find the content that they're looking for. Hey, appreciate you watching. We will see you on the next one.